Hey guys, what's happening?
Well, we are still on somewhat of a lockdown here in Greater Los Angeles. Nothing like what you're going through, but for Americans, it's pretty locked down.
Mm-hmm.
And we have been seeing some breakthroughs in some areas. One example, and keep in mind, I mean, I think we're learning from the Bible and from case studies and historians like you that movements don't happen overnight, but when they do, it seems like they are, that there's a lot of praying and fasting and sharing and training, just obedience to Jesus. And then when he chooses to move, he chooses to move. I got on a call with Jay Ashcraft the other day. You remember Jay, where we had our bags stolen out of the back of his car in Oakland, up in the San Francisco area. Jay has been laboring faithfully for 4 or 5 years up there in the Bay Area, bivocationally. And earlier in the spring, right before the coronavirus broke out, he had an African couple come to him and just ask him, can you show us how to start a church? So he went with them in their home, modeled a basic 3/3 format, and just a simple, gather around the word, care for one another, and set goals for obeying Jesus. And he did not hear from them for about 3.5 months. And he just recently heard from them, and they have been gathering with about 20 people every week. Wow. And so just those simple tools. And then he said a few weeks ago, he had a man come to his office. He's a bivocational pastor at a church. A man came to his office, African-American man, and said he wanted to be baptized. And Jay said, well, have you ever heard the gospel before? He's like, no. So he shared the gospel with him, and the man said, I want to follow Jesus and be baptized. And Jay has been making disciples and with a vision to start churches all across the Bay Area. And he said, hey, I legally can't baptize you here in the church because of the restrictions we have right now. Do you know somebody that has a pool or a place like a bathtub that we could baptize you in? He's like, yeah, I got a friend. So he went to this woman's house and to get baptized, and 3 of her children and one of their friends were there. And she and these 4 kids all said, we want to be baptized too. And he said, well, have you heard the gospel before? And they're like, no. So he shared the gospel. They all said they wanted to follow Jesus. So he baptized 6 people, and they helped with the baptism as well. So they became baptizers. And he began to go through the 411 and the commands of Christ and meet with them weekly. And they've started a church in their home. He's like, Troy, Jesus gets all the credit for this. And I'm like, yeah, Jay, absolutely. Of course, he always does. But it's just so clear. Like, you've been obeying him in the things that he's asked you to do. And then here he does this and sees these people come to faith. And so those kind of things are, we're starting to hear more examples of God just moving. Jolene and Jonathan Burtz, who Rick and Jenny have been investing a lot in over the last couple of years. She's had a discovered Bible study in her home. And there were some women who have said yes to Jesus. And just in the last couple of weeks, I think 3 of them, she was able to baptize 3 of them. They obeyed Jesus in baptism. And Puck's got a cool story about a new disciple.
Yeah, man, I got connected with this young guy. He's probably early 30s, from a friend on the other side of the world, who said, hey, this guy, you need to connect with this guy here in your backyard, basically. We got connected, had some lunch together, and he has been following the Lord for maybe 2 months now. Brand new, about a month when we first met. It had only been about a month. And so he had just come to the Lord and has come through a really, really hard life. 7 years in prison, 4 years of addiction once he got out of prison, busted up family, living in a really hard neighborhood. And the Lord has just been setting him free from one thing after another. He's on fire for Jesus, but he's in healthy recovery. He's even, given up smoking, things like this. And it's just like the Lord is setting him free, and he's just praising God for it. And we were together in the church that meets in our home just a couple of weeks ago, and asked the question, man, have you been baptized yet? I don't think I don't think you have. It's one of those where we just connected with him on this side of him coming to faith. And he said, no. I said, well, we need to talk about that. He goes, okay, I'm down. And so, I had some folks join me in praying for him, that he would see that not just as something to say yes to, but something to follow through with in obedience to Jesus. So our whole church met on the beach the following week, and we, sang some songs. We prayed, we ate some food, had a bonfire. It's one of those kind of beaches where you have a bonfire together, we're having church together. We go down to the beach and get to baptize him. And just the other night, a couple of nights ago now, was sitting with him, having dinner at my house, just talking a little bit about his life and what he's been through. And we were talking about, hey, who's the most lost person in your life right now? And so he starts telling me about some guys. This one guy, Dave, and this other guy, Knuckles. I never heard about a guy named Knuckles before. And he's telling me, I'm kind of scared to share the gospel. He gets really nervous as I say this, and he's telling me, kind of nervous. Okay, Puck. All right, man. I see where this is going. He said, I'm just kind of afraid I might get stabbed if I share with him. Like, I've never had that kind of a concern before. But by the end, we've got a list of people in his life who are far from God. I said, brother, who would have seen you as the most lost person in their life? Look what Jesus has done in your life. So what might Jesus do in the most lost person in your life, in their life, if they were to come to know him? And so we're starting to pray together through all the names on his list of people who are far from God. And even tomorrow and on, I believe, Sunday, he's got a couple of meetings set with some of those friends to begin sharing Jesus with them. And we're talking now about trying to gather some of those people to do some discovery Bible study, or begin to do church and let them begin to experience Jesus as I help him follow Jesus more and more obediently on his own kind of turf in his backyard. So we're just rejoicing. He's just on fire and is trying to do whatever Jesus wants him to do. It's a beautiful thing.
He's such a joyful guy. Like, he is bringing a lot of like life and encouragement to the church. At the baptism we did at the beach, we had 2 other churches from 2 other cities that are pursuing NPL, and then a laborer in Inglewood come out for the baptism, and it just brought life and encouragement to see this guy just obeying Jesus, and it was such a sweet time.
What are you saying, Rick?
Well, we're coming off a wildly exciting weekend this past weekend. We had a 4 fields intensive training. The first one in person we've had probably since the lockdown, and so we're trying to be careful and follow all that. But we did it around a family who was super hungry to get in the Word and see the things that they'd been practicing week to week in the Bible. And so it's a family that Puck has been walking with for well over a year now. And he is a professor at a local university, and she is a local business owner. She's a dentist and owns her own practice. And so they have 2 kids. You'd be hard pressed to find a busier family as far as things they have to do. But they have been taking one step at a time toward making disciples. And, I think it started going out in the harvest on his university campus and sharing with people they know. They had a group in their home. They're working through the discipleship. They're seeing some new people come to faith, and they're training a lot of others. And we're sitting in this room going through the Word, and they're starting to relate to some of these characters in the New Testament and pull out of God's Word what they should be doing next with the people they've been training in the room. And it was this moment, we've been talking a lot about coalescing, like when things kind of come together. And so Puck and I are sitting there after the training. All 3 of us were there. Puck and I are debriefing with the family after. And the business owner, the dentist, she starts to describe how her impression of the weekend. She says, when you're at Harvard dental school.
Yeah,
Just when you find yourself in Harvard Dental School, you got to go through 2 years of medical before you enter the dental program. And she's like, what happens in Harvard Medical School is that you study each system of the body very in depth. Cardiovascular, lymph system, all the systems, digestive, and it feels disjointed. And then you've got one class at the end where everything comes together and you see the human body just do its thing with, every part of it working together. She's looking at all the posters from the training around the room. She's thinking about what her people were saying and their plans. She said, that's what this training was. It was the step-by-step things we've been taking that are coalescing into, like, we see how the kingdom's going to advance. And it's been so cool for us. It's a huge testament to Puck's leadership, but even more so just the way the Holy Spirit has taken this family on a journey. Yeah. And, they went from, we just want to share the gospel, to a heart for lost people, to a heart for lost people in their neighborhood, and then growing their vision into, man, what can we give our lives to? And so, there's something about, I think, especially with everybody longing to be around others right now. Everybody's doing a lot through Zoom and consuming content, but just being in the room, interacting around God's word and what does this mean for us? They walked away with ownership, like that local ownership of the core missionary task was, you could hear it in what they were saying. You could see it in their plans. And the other thing that they walked away with, I think now more than ever, is just the idea of how is a Christian supposed to use their time, right? Like, the days are evil, they're wasting away. So how do we use our time effectively? And I think they were like, everybody slowed down a little bit. You have a second to think about it. And what they're seeing is, we've got this church in our home. If we want to see these people multiply, we have to give them our time. Like, we have to help them do every step of the process, be with them, assist them in praying, assist them in sharing the gospel, assist them in baptizing and discipleship, all the way to church formation and beyond. And I think the key, one of the keys to multiplication, maybe second to prayer and fasting, is just time with your disciples. And so, what we have right now is an environment where that's what we got. We got time. So, and it's been huge.
Yeah, we really, at that training this last week, Rick was the lead trainer, and we got to swarm it together. He did a phenomenal job. I think we had done an iron on iron with Joel Shaw over the weekend, and Daniel Solid was there and was just stressing the importance of mauling, model, assist, watch, and leave.
Yeah.
And so Rick brought that as a focus for the weekend, and Jeff lovingly challenged us that we've been drifting from the Luke study in the 4 Fields intensive and focusing focus on Paul and Acts, but don't stop focusing on Jesus and Luke. And so we made sure to keep that no matter how much time we had. And so Rick did a phenomenal job after the Luke 8 through 11 discovery, using the 4 Fields to just pull out Jesus modeled, he assisted, he walked. It was a maul hammer. And then just really going after church identity, using the church circle, and then having some specific passages from 1 Corinthians to diagnose the health of the church in Corinth. And I think they only had 3 of the 10 things inside the circle. And it really spoke like, wow, okay, I can't remember what they were, but and then he said, now look, they were called a church. He called them a church. Look at what he says about them at the beginning of chapter 1. And just really talking about, now we want to see health, but, and then Puck dropped the hammer at the end, looking at the churches in Revelation, about how Jesus had removed some of the lampstands, and just really pointing out, like, who is it that says whether it's a church or not? It's Jesus. And so really going after church identity from the word, it was a powerful weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been, Will Smith, he and his family have moved into the Atlanta area after catalyzing movements over in Asia for over 10 years. I know they were instrumental in Rick being activated into movement work. So they've settled in North Georgia, and he is focusing on the diaspora strategy. He's leading that up for E3 right now with a focus on how do we help people in cities intentionally go after the ethne, the unreached, the unengaged. And because we've been going after the path of least resistance out here, following the relationships. And then the Lord has led us through some friends to connect with Tien, who was going after a large Vietnamese population. He introduced us to a brother at the Keystone Project named Tim Hutchinson. He's got a team that's going after the unreached. We've got the Swedbergs, who have moved out here from Atlanta to be a part of our team that are aimed at going over to Asia. They're planning in the next month, praying through relocating into an apartment complex specifically for going out, engaging South Asians. But at this training, I think it was David Garrison, Global Gates released like an infographic on unreached, unengaged people groups in Los Angeles. And I think 3 of the top 5 were Jewish peoples. And one of the leaders that Jan has been investing in is a guy named Mike, who heads up an organization that's focused on engaging Jewish peoples all across Southern California. He was there with some of his leaders. And so as we've been praying and fasting, like how do we engage the ethic? How do we go after, Will's really challenged us, you got to pray and fast. And the Lord is beginning to open up these doors and bring us, honestly, like we're not looking for them or find like God's bringing them to us, and we're getting to serve them and wash their feet and show them from the Bible, or in this case, Jan is leading. And we're just seeing some amazing answers to prayer.
How long have you guys been in Los Angeles, in the region, as a team?
Well, the Priatos and us moved out here a little over 2 years ago, and the Pucketts moved out here just over a year and a half ago.
Okay.
And,
so what are you learning about reaching a city, one of the world's great cities?
Ricky?
I mean, I would say there's no question that the time, how do you steward your time is number 1 or number 2 as far as what do you do in a city. And we almost did a little bit of reflection the other day, and it was like, man, we were looking at all that God has done. We were celebrating. We said, man, we have, like, realistically, we've not even made a dent in the lostness in the city. There is such a massive gap. And we're looking at multiplication across 8 streams. We're not at 4G yet. We're pushing 3rd gen in a couple areas, primarily 1. But so we've got a lot of 1st and a little bit of 2nd gen that is strong right now in multiple streams of churches. And we're just seeing a lot of small fires starting across the city. And I think that's a big piece of what it takes is, we want to filter like Jesus did, using parables, using lordship, using hard sayings. And we also want to take what God has in front of us. We want to look for people that are hungry. And as we find them, we have to walk at a bite-sized pace with them, give them what they can take with the time they have. And we're noticed as people are taking, 1 step forward at a time, they're realizing what God is calling them to. They're realizing, okay, my disciples need this kind of time. They need another level of my focus. And they're buying in based on what's in front of them. So our vision cast, we have to be strong and bold and from the word, but we also have to let people walk out the path that that God has them and their family on.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm.
What do you got? I think one of the challenges, we were talking about this just earlier today, one of the challenges that we wrestle with in a large city, especially one like LA that's so spread out. It's not a highly densely populated city that goes up. It spreads way out. One of the challenges is, where does our time go? And I think that's one of our opportunities also. So we were just reflecting today on how there have been some cases where giving people time and being generous with our investment with them, whether they're really local to us or they're, in a far part of the city or whatever, it speaks differently than when I've been, on the East Coast or, in a smaller town kind of environment or rural areas. It means something different. And so there is this element of filtering that I feel like I'm noticing, where when we give time and investment to people, whether they see that as useful or not, whether they see that as an investment or not, in some way is helping us filter with where we continue to spend our time.
Yeah.
So in a more rural, small town environment where I came from before we were here, I would spend time with anybody, just about any time, because my commute was 10 minutes. We all kind of knew some of the same people, and I could offer that. That was great, and I feel like that was useful. That was appropriate in that setting. But I've had to change my filter a bit in terms of, well, where am I spending my time? How much am I going to commit? What am I asking people? Where am I asking them to go with me? What's the bar that we're setting? Because to Rick's point, he said, even with all of what God is allowing us to get to steward and invest in here locally right now, we haven't even made a tiny dent in we're talking about 20 million people in our metro area. It's highly diverse, highly segmented. One community from the next can be just a world apart, one from another. Just because they're geographically close doesn't mean they have any other relation to one another. So for me, it's just helping me remember the sheer task, the fact that I can't do it, our team can't do it, God has to do this work, and we have to raise up an army of laborers and leaders by God's grace. And so we are just having to look back constantly and celebrate what is God doing, so we don't get lost in the lostness only. We celebrate how Jesus is moving, but then we don't pat ourselves on the back too much for, man, look at where we are. We're doing it. We're really doing it. There's a place for that, but then there's also this important impulse where we've got to turn back and go, and look how much more lostness there is. Yeah. So it's driving us towards the local ownership of the core missionary tasks. The way we define No Place Left is that we're aiming for local ownership of the core missionary task amongst every peoples and in every place. And so we're dependent on God to raise up local owners of the core missionary task amongst every people group and in every place, because we can't drive in and out. We can't be the ones who lead it. We would just be stuck on the freeway all the time, trying to go get the glory for ourselves if that's what we were trying to do. And it wouldn't work if we could get there in time. But instead, we get to see how God is moving through people who desperately want to see him move in their community. And then we get to just celebrate with what Jesus is doing in the midst of that.
Yeah, Pug, as you're saying that, I think there's, when you come in as an outsider and you're really trying to get things started, there's already a lot that God's doing, but Puck's talking about how we use our time. And I think in a major city like this, time is really felt as love, like loving. And so I just remember, Puck with this family, we were with Jan and Janet this weekend during the intensive, when he was training them in the commands of Christ, he's driving 2 hours through traffic there and maybe an hour and a half back on a Wednesday. And when he shows up there, what everybody says is, this guy came from Long Beach to help us. And it's just, it communicates, okay, you have this vision but you're showing me I'm a part of that by being here and by spending time. And I just think there's something to, like, you know, giving our time to communicates value. It communicates, hey, you're in on this. You're a part of this vision, and God wants to use you, and invites them to do the same with their leaders and disciples.
And it forces the issue, because it's clear to me just a few weeks in, and I'm getting tired of making the drive, you know, getting weary from traffic or whatever. And I know I can't keep this up forever. You know, yeah. I can do this for a certain amount of time, but they see it really clearly too, that, hey, this is going to be on us soon. And so we're not going to be able to have this person lead it for us. You know, as if, you know, if we were down the street from each other, we would approach that a little differently. Right. But if they're across the city from us, man, it's really clear. Hey, there's a focused amount of time we can give that's going to be healthy, that's going to be sustainable. And then we got to pull away, and they have to take ownership of it. And so from the beginning, they were picking that up, realizing, well, this is what we want, is to be able to do this here, not to have someone come and do the work for us. And that's what made it work, is because God had already been stirring that up in their family. So it was an easy yes to go that far or to go farther, you know, and now we have almost an archetype to pray for. God, give us another family like them. Give us 100 more families like them in the valley. Give us 100 more families like them in all the other major areas around our metro area, and help us to keep up.
I think that's one of the main things I've learned about working in a large city like Los Angeles area is, like, God has clearly called us three and our families out here for this season. And, but the people that are here are the plan. And we feel like he's really, even though we've started a church, it's a church for other church planters. The Lord is working mightily through these, and we're literally just getting to wash their feet, to serve them, to provide them training and coaching and mentoring that is going to be passed on. You know, and it's coming at a cost for them. Seeing each of them, like, we haven't gotten to talk a ton about JT yet, but you know, he was one of the original leaders that we came out to serve with training. Rick led them through the training cycle. And that's why we moved to Long Beach. We saw what God was doing in their family. And, but it's cost them to obey Jesus in this way. And now it's funny, during COVID, you know, they've got a church of about 250 that they started 20 years ago. He also started a church in his home after going through Rick's training. And now that church has multiplied to the third generation, including its jumped language and culture to a Spanish speaking, which we've been praying and fasting for, because we really believe that the Latino community is a key to movement, not just in LA, but the US. But their church has not had to stop meeting. They've split up into 12 different churches now. And some of them were like, oh, this is what you were talking about? Like, this is awesome. They're caring for one another. They're in the word together. They're sharing responsibility. They're, you know, it was amazing to see him just obey the Lord's leading and persevere in that. My friend Jarrell, who lives in Inglewood, he is African-American man, sharp, very just distinctly called to the lostness and needs in the inner city. And there is just this certainty in his life, in his voice, that God is going to move, and he is going to give his life to it. We met yesterday with Kirk, who is, and these are all people from this area. They've grown up in this area. Kirk, his wife has been battling cancer, and So they've been walking through that and just the suffering that goes along with that. But, you know, so he's 65, he's high risk. So he's got to wear a mask. He doesn't want his wife to get sick. He's got 5 areas. He had this map that he showed us of Huntington Beach, 5 communities. He has been prayer driving these areas, begging God to move in these 5 communities. And we were talking about, so it's like, golly, what's our excuse? You know, what's anybody else's excuse? But this is the kind of like calling and cost that, you know, the kind of people we get to work with. But we're talking through like, you know, as the restrictions start to lift, and we're talking about, you know, do you knock doors? And he just, with tears in his eyes, said, I don't really care how we do it, guys. I just know we need to get the gospel to these people. These people need the gospel. And it was just like, wow, this is what it's going to take, you know, and to think like, we get to serve these people. We get to walk with these people, you know, for as long as they need us. And the other amazing thing, so there's probably 9 different leaders or networks that we're getting to walk with right now that COVID, like we're driving all over the city, meeting with them, you know, cause that's what was needed. But with the lockdown, we've been able to meet with them at 2 different times online and have these weekly gatherings where we're just digging right into Luke, digging into Acts. We're going through the Word Works wineskin study right now. Like, and so like they are growing in their relationship with one another. Now we've got some community of practices together. They're problem solving together. And it's like, I just feel like the Lord has used this time to really bring things. Yeah, there's been suffering, but there's been breakthroughs. And I feel like he's setting us up for who knows how long we're going to be locked down. I mean, it's probably going to be at least another year here, we're guessing. But God's moving amidst this chaos. And we were joking today about what our plan looked like for like the first 100 days, what we thought our schedule was going to look like. And we're just like laughing like, oh, that's so cute. We thought that that's what we were going to be doing or where we're going to be. But like the people that we get to serve Jesus with, and it's worth dying for. And even though we're on this lockdown, we're seeing him move, and we're able to pour ourselves out to see local ownership here. But that this love for Jesus and love for one another that cannot be contained. That we would see that across our city, and that it would spread from here because the nations are here. That it would that we're seeing people going overseas.
I couldn't agree more.
Excellent. Well, that's